Start with that. Good morning, everybody. Our today's topic is prolapse uterus. So this presentation will contain introduction to prolapse, its definition, what are the causes which cause the uterine prolapse, types of prolapse, then what are the degrees of prolapse, diagnosis, sign, symptom and management of prolapse. It is one of the common clinical condition made in day-to-day gynec practice. You also must have seen many prolapse patients in gynecopedy. It is most often seen in multiparous women. It is a form of herniation of the abdominal product or organs. Uterine prolapse can happen to women at any age, but it affects postmenopausal women who had one or more vaginal deliveries. The incidence of prolapse is about 1 in 250 pregnancies. Uterine prolapse occurs when pelvic floor muscles and ligaments stretch and they weaken, providing inadequate support for the uterus. The uterus then slips down into or protrudes out of vagina. Weakening of the pelvic muscles that leads to uterine prolapse can be caused by damage of supportive tissue during pregnancy and childbirth, effects of gravity, then loss of estrogen hormone causing the weakening of the ligaments. Now coming to the supports of uterus, you know very well the uterus is supported by various ligaments, round ligament, broad ligament, pubocervical ligament, pelvic floor muscle, then uterosacral ligament. Coming to the definition of prolapse, the uterine prolapse means the uterus has descended from its normal position in the pelvis farther down into the vagina. Uterine prolapse is a form of female genital prolapse. It is also called as pelvic organ prolapse or prolapse of uterus or the womb. Now if you look at this diagram, you can understand how the uterus descends down. When it descends down more and more, it comes outside the introitus. Now we'll see how each and every factor causes the prolapse. The most important factor is the birth injury. It is very important as the perineal tear is less harmful than the excessive stretching of the pelvic floor muscles and ligaments that occur during childbirth, because overstretching causes atonicity, whereas torn muscles could be stitched or toned up. Then peripheral nerve injuries such as pudendal nerve injury during childbirth causes prolapse, which is reversible in 60% of cases, and it may be responsible for stress urinary incontinence also. Now about bearing down that mother does at the time of delivery. If this bearing down is done before full dilatation of the cervix and when the bladder is not empty, that can cause the stretching of ligament. Heavy work just after delivery without adequate rest and pelvic floor exercises can also cause the weakening of the pelvic floor. Then delivery of a big baby that causes stretching of the perineal muscles and leads to patulous, introitus and prolapse. That precipitates labor and fundal pressure. If it is given before full dilatation, the excessive fundal pressure can cause stretching of ligaments and then causes the weakening of the pelvic floor. A rapid succession of pregnancies means without adequate interval. If there are successive pregnancies, that also can cause the weakening of the pelvic floor and leading to prolapse. Loss of pelvic support, which results in uterine prolapse. Which are the other causes other than this delivery and pregnancy related causes? Congenital weakness. Congenital weakness of the uterus and vagina is the most important causative factor of uterovaginal prolapse. It is usually seen in nulliparous women and is called as nulliparous prolapse. Acquired defects, they are seen in multiparous women, overstretching of the ligaments during delivery. Then menopausal atrophy. After menopause, due to withdrawal of estrogen, there is atrophy of genital tract and its support, and that again leads to prolapse in these menopausal ladies. In women, due to atrophy of ligaments and supports of uterus and vagina, that can lead to prolapse. Then activating factors for prolapse are the uterus vaginal prolapse. They are aggravated by fibroids which are causing on the traction on the uterus. Then some of the pelvic tumors which are causing excessive traction, that also can lead to prolapse. Another is body type. Some women have softer connective tissue than others, which means the ligaments that support the pelvic organ, they loosen more easily and they can lead to prolapse. Then obesity also can be one of the causative factor in prolapse. Retroverted uterus and anteverted uterus, see how the axis changes and the axis of gravity also changes when the uterus becomes retroverted from its anteverted position, which may hasten the prolapse. Now coming, after seeing the etiology of prolapse, coming to the types of prolapse. The prolapse can be divided into different types. One is uterovaginal prolapse. It is the prolapse in which the uterus, cervix and upper vagina, they are prolapsed down. This is the commonest type and it is accompanied by cystocele, that is the bladder also descends down into the pelvis. Then coming to the other type is the congenital prolapse. In this, there may not be cystocele. It is usually seen in nulliparous women, so it is called as nulliparous prolapse, and its cause is congenital weak supports of the uterus. Now after that, we'll see the classification of prolapse. When the anterior vaginal wall, upper 2/3, is prolapsed, that is a cystocele, and if the lower part at the site of urethra, if there is a prolapse, it is called cystourethrocoele. In case of posterior vaginal wall, upper 1/3 prolapse is called enterocele, that is a pouch of Douglas has come down. Lower 2/3 is called as rectocele. Now uterine descent, that can be first degree, second degree, third degree or procedentia. First degree is the descent of cervix and vagina, cervix and uterus into the vagina. Second degree, further descent leading the cervix coming up to the introitus. Third degree, the descent of the cervix coming outside the introitus, and when the whole of the uterus comes down, as it is seen in the diagram, it is called as procedentia. See, this diagram is very self-explanatory. If you look at the diagram on the left side, upper quadrant, it is the normal anatomy. Uterus is anteverted, cervix is at its normal position, bladder is at its normal position, then uterus becomes little retroverted. There is a weakening in the anterior compartment of pelvic floor where the bladder has descended down, and that is now labeled as cystocele. Then if you look at the left lower quadrant where the pouch of Douglas has descended down, that can be seen behind the uterus, and then that is called as rectocele. Okay, and whole of the uterus and cervix coming down, it is called as uterine prolapse. Usually this uterine prolapse is associated with either cystocele or enterocele, rectocele, urethrocoele, any of them. This diagram is also very self-explanatory. See how the bladder has prolapsed through the anterior vaginal wall, causing a bulge in the anterior vaginal wall, which is labeled as cystocele. While the bladder is at normal place, but the support near the urethra is lost, causing bulging at the site of urethra, and it is called as urethrocoele. Enterocoel, where the small bowel is coming through the descent of the pouch of Douglas. It is called enterocoel, while rectocoel, in the lower part of the posterior vaginal wall, there will be a bulge which is caused because of the rectum anal canal, and then it is called as rectocoel. This again shows the normal female pelvis anatomy on left side and the prolapsed anatomy on the right side. So coming to the degrees of prolapse, first degree is the uterus descends down from the anatomical position, that is the external os is at the level of the ischial spine, it is the normal position, but if the external os still comes down in the vagina but still inside the introitus, it is called first degree. Second degree is the external or the external os protrudes outside the vaginal introitus, but the whole of the uterine body still remains inside the vagina. That becomes the second degree. Third degree is the uterine cervix and body descends and lie outside the introitus. It is called as procedentia or complete prolapse, where the whole of the uterus and total eversion of the entire vagina occurs. It is inevitably associated with cystocele, enterocele also. See, these are the diagrams which are showing. In first diagram, first degree prolapse, the cervix and uterus are still inside the introitus, but they have descended a bit. In second diagram, that is second degree prolapse, where it has come right up to the introitus. In third degree, it has descended further outside the introitus, and when whole of the fundus of the uterus is also coming out, then it becomes the procedentia. This is again the diagrammatic representation of the prolapse, where the inverted fundus is there, second degree body of fundus is protruding, and third degree where there is inverted. See, this diagram is definitely giving you the idea how that prolapse looks. Minimal bulging on left side, it is showing the cystocele bulge in the middle part. This is also showing the cystocele bulge. Now in a patient of prolapse, patient will complain something coming out of vagina. Sometimes they will be having urinary complaints like stress incontinence or urgency or incomplete evacuation. Some patients will come with constipation and so on. These patients, once you have examined and decided the degree of prolapse and what are the organs that have been prolapsed, after that you will have to do the investigations like routine investigation, blood group, CBC, urine and all. Then pelvic examination is very important. Uterine sounding, whether there is increased uterocervical length is there or not, that has to be seen. Associated some fornacial pathology like some ovarian cyst or something is there, that has to be examined. Rectal examination also has to be done. Then investigations are ultrasonography, X-ray and MRI. X-ray is for preoperative fitness, where the patient is having some pathology in the lung leading to chronic cough, which ultimately leads to prolapse. Ultrasonography will definitely give you idea about the associated pathology in the uterus or ovaries. MRI can be done. Now coming to the differential diagnosis. What are the differential diagnoses? Cystic swelling in the vagina. Could be some retention cyst of some vaginal mucosal gland also can cause swelling. Chronic inversion of uterus, that also sometimes may be misdiagnosed as prolapse. Hypertrophy of the cervix itself causes the feeling of prolapse. Then all other causes of low backache and urinary symptoms, maybe urinary tract infection leading to frequency, urgency, stress incontinence, that also should be ruled out. Then congestion of vagina. In case of severe vaginitis, may give the feeling of fullness in vagina. What are the signs? Uterovaginal prolapse may be visible during inspection of vulva itself. In case of minor prolapse, it may become visible after patient strains or coughs. And rectal examination also helps in differentiating whether there is rectocele or the enterocele is there. Patient comes. Feeling of something coming out of vagina, there is a discomfort in walking, the dragging sensation and backache. Then dyspareunia will be there. Urinary symptoms will be there in presence of cystocele in the form of difficulty in passing urine. She has to elevate the anterior vaginal wall for bladder evacuation sometimes if it is incomplete. This incomplete evacuation leads to frequent desire to pass the urine. Then urgency and frequency will be there, which may be due to cystitis sometimes. If infection is there, there will be dysuria. If the angle between the bladder and the urethra is changed, it can lead to stress urinary incontinence. And rarely, urine retention also can be seen in these patients. Now, how we'll manage the case of uterine prolapse? This management can be divided into different headings, like first and foremost is prevention. Second is physiotherapy, which can be advised. Third is non-surgical treatment like pessary. And lastly, the surgical treatment should be advised. Now coming to the prevention. Repeated childbirth with short interval causes uterovaginal prolapse, that you know very well. So women should be advised to avoid pregnancies in a shorter duration or a quick succession. There should be adequate of interval between the two pregnancies so as to proper healing takes place before the second pregnancy. Then during labor also we have to take some precaution to avoid prolapse. Avoid bearing down before full dilatation of cervix. Then breech or forceps delivery before full dilatation, that is a traction with the help of instrument without full dilatation of cervix will lead to the excessive traction on the ligaments and weakening of the ligament. Now during second stage of labor, prolonged second stage, prolonged bearing down, that again causes the weakening of the fascia and ligaments in the pelvis and pelvic floor. Then episiotomy should be given whenever it is necessary because irregular tears and excessive stretching are bad compared to clean cut episiotomy given on the perineum. In third stage of labor, that is after delivery of baby, you should avoid the traction on the cord by Credy's method, which should be avoided. You should wait till separation of placenta. Abnormal traction should not be given. And whatever tears are there or episiotomy if it is given, they should be carefully sutured so that they will not cause weakness in the pelvic floor. During puerperium also, the patient has to take care. She has to avoid stressful activities and any infection, then cough or something like that should be treated properly during the puerperium. Then a word about the Kegel's exercise. These are usually prescribed or usually advised to the patient to improve many conditions. These are the pelvic floor exercises. How they are to be done? Patient has to lift her pelvic floor and then contract her pelvic muscles. These exercises can be done at any location at home or office or in the car, where in the sitting position also she can contract her pelvic muscles repeatedly, which will increase the strength in those muscles. Once the muscles are contracted, she has to count from 1 to 10 and has to do the repetitions. So this was something about prevention of prolapse. Now about the non-surgical treatment of prolapse. Pessary can be used as a non-surgical method. It is a mechanical device for correcting and controlling uterine prolapse. It does not cure the prolapse. It only holds the genital organ in position. This is usually advised for the patients who cannot undergo surgery immediately. Pessaries are of different types like ring pessary or Hodge pessary. When will you advise the pessaries? Not to the all patients, only those patients where patients are pregnant, like in first trimester, and they are complaining of prolapse. We can place the pessary and put the uterus and cervix inside the introitus. Suppose the prolapse is there during puerperium and you want to keep the cervix and uterus at its anatomical position, we can advise pessary. If you have planned surgery but patient is unfit for the surgery, then also we can advise pessary. And sometimes patient doesn't want to undergo surgery, then also this pessary can be advised. Now what is the choice of pessary? Ring pessaries are commonly used than the Hodge pessaries, and different sizes of pessaries are available depending upon the size of vagina. The size of pessary can be advised or tried in that patient. It has to be properly sterilized. Its insertion has to be done. Before insertion, the pessary is kept in hot water for a few minutes so that the pessary becomes soft and easily inserted. Once the pessary is put, proper follow-up is also necessary. Pessary should be removed, cleaned and reinserted at a regular interval of 6 months. So proper follow-up is must. Now if you look at this picture, it is showing how the pessary holds the cervix at its position. On the right side, there is a Gellhorn pessary, and lower down, this is almost similar to ring pessary. Pessary is nothing but a bangle-like thing which rests on the pubic symphysis to sacrum and holds the cervix and uterus at its position so that it does not come out. Coming to the surgical treatment of prolapse, usually the vaginal hysterectomy is done. Its indications: when will you advise the hysterectomy? If the lady is old, postmenopausal, and she is complaining of prolapse, or some uterine pathology along with the prolapse like fibroid or adenomyosis is there causing menorrhagia and menstrual disturbances, then also the surgery, that is the hysterectomy, can be advised. Prolapse, suppose if it is occurring during childbearing age after completion of family, then you can advise the hysterectomy. There are some other operations like Birch operation. They are done for the relief of the stress urinary incontinence, where the angle between the bladder and urethra is disturbed, and that is corrected with the help of Birch operation. Another thing is done along with vaginal hysterectomy is anterior colporrhaphy, when there is associated cystocele, where the anterior vaginal wall is bulging, so the correction is done at that level. It is called anterior colporrhaphy. Similarly, posterior colporrhaphy, it is done for the repair of the posterior vaginal wall and perineum. Another is a Manchester repair, or also called as Fothergill's repair. A word about it. It is done for the repair of the uterovaginal prolapse. It is carried out in a woman of childbearing age and she has not yet completed the family, and she again wants to have pregnancy. In those cases, if there is elongation of cervix, you can do this operation called as Fothergill's operation. So there are some conservative surgeries of prolapse in which this Fothergill operation comes, where the cervix is amputated, the ligaments are shortened so that the uterus and cervix is lifted up. Similarly, another operation is called as Shirodkar's operation. This is also one of the modification of the original Fothergill, where again the ligaments are tied and shortened so that the uterus is pulled up. There are some sling operations where the different